Today, I'm inviting you to walk with me through a photography session in Nepal where we join some monks and have a lot of momos and take a lot of photographs. I'm going to show you a bunch of the raw files and how I process them, a treatment style that I have developed to go with this particular shoot, and show you just how many dud shots I really do take when I'm on a shoot. In the Himalayas, so many teachings for young monks are based around the idea of learning to be humble and to recognize the importance of compassion for other humans. Every temple and gompa is effectively supported by a larger community that exists outside the temple. It's really common for some of the local residents to enlist the help of monks to perform prayers and puja at their homes, and in return, the monks are fed and given donations. Something I like to do with my photographers when I'm traveling in Bhutan or Nepal is to spend time with the monks and to have some blessings and also to share a lunch. This is not only humbling for the monks, but ideally it's humbling for our travellers as well. When we come and join the gompa for lunch, we cover the cost of the meal and we supply a few extras. Sometimes this means that the head cook gets a chance to splurge and to treat the monks to a special feast, such as momos. And sometimes it also means that they get to restock the kitchen with some pantry items that might be hard to get during winter. So it's a special occasion for everyone involved, and especially us. I love doing the gompa lunches. It's not just that we show up and take photos, rather we're staying and spending some time with the monks, and we get a chance to develop a little bit of rapport with them too. And I get to come back the following year with a ton of extra lovely photos that I can hand back to them. But just the momos alone bring these temples to life, as all of the young monks get really excited and get to tuck into a really special meal. And you can see that beyond the robes, they're actually just little children and they enjoy this moment in their own special way. The first thing that I want to show you is a treatment style that I'm working with for this particular set of images. I've opted for a very low contrast vibe where I'm trying to avoid getting harsh blacks, and I'm putting a floor beneath where the blacks are going to sit, and I'm using the curve tool in order to do that. So if we take a closer look at that curve tool, you'll see that all the way down the bottom there, I've taken away where my blacks might ordinarily sit. If you go too high, some weird things will start to happen. That's not good. If you go too low, you're not really seeing much effect at all. As to where the right point belongs, that's up to your personal preference. I've gone for something that will work nicely when I have a lot of blacks in the scene. So I'm composing for the darkness. I want to get some blacks in there so I can lift them and get that softer paper-like feel. And this particular treatment doesn't have too many things going on because that's how I like to do my processing. I don't pull thousands of sliders, I just pull a couple of them. I've come off on the highlights just a little bit, and that becomes important in things like here where it's nice and shiny. You can see the difference that makes. Just to have that high dynamic range, bringing the highlights back is a really good tool. Under the exposure, I'm just being very, very gentle with contrast. Most of the tools that I've seen are very harsh with contrast. So when you're using Capture One or Lightroom or DxO, straight out of the gate, I find they're a little overdone with contrast, they're overdone with sharpness, and I like to take those two things out. In this case, I'm also putting a little bit of extra shadow detail in there, and that lifts up some of the blacks so that they're not quite getting to black. Curves is what's doing all the work. That's the most important thing there, is how those curves are doing that. You can see the before and after. They're very, very different. The other thing is I've warmed up those tones. Part of that is for creative effect, but also part of that is whenever you're removing contrast or removing saturation, you're going to want to put a little bit of warmth back into the tones, because otherwise your images feel a lot cooler than they might otherwise need to be. Putting back some warmth, lifting up the blacks, and generally taking out contrast is essentially what's going on with this particular processing treatment style. The other thing that I really want to highlight is that we have 1,077 photographs in this particular folder. This is all shot from just one lunch. To be honest, 1,000 shots is not a lot for me. That's probably me not going too hard at it and trying to make sure I'm not getting in everyone else's photographs. But it is a lot of photographs to work through and to have a look and see if you've got any keepers that you really want. And this is where tools like Capture One or Lightroom with their raw workflow structure are really, really powerful, because they let me see exactly what I've got very, very quickly and jump through and find the images that I'm going to want to keep. The other thing that's really great is that I can apply that treatment style. Once I create it on the first image, I can then just select the whole lot. I can throw it across the whole lot in one big hit. And then I can do some fine tuning on that a little bit later on. The raw workflow is very, very powerful. On this particular day, I shot a whole bunch of stuff using a 35mm on one camera and a 20mm on the other. They're both f2 lenses, they're primes, they're made by Sigma, they're very, very lovely. And the camera that these were captured on is the Sony ZV-E1. It's only a 12 megapixel sensor, so they're not huge files, but they're good enough for social media, that's for sure. Here's a little bit of context about the monastery where we're going. It's not a fancy one. There's not a lot of bling going on here. It's quite close to the Swayambunut temple in Kathmandu, in the middle of the city. They were absolutely insistent that we came in and we got to look at the prayer hall and to see what was going on in their temple. They're very proud of what they've got. So here we're looking at a very brief set that's sort of the top picks, and there's maybe 200 images here that I've kept, and I've given them a star or maybe 3 stars if I think they're really, really good. So at the end of this video, all of the ones that didn't get a star I'm going to delete. And if I sort by name instead of by the rating, you can see just how many of the same photo I'm really taking. So here, if I step through, you can see I'm really using that continuous burst a lot so that I can get a lot of shots at the end of the day that I can choose from and get the very, very subtle differences, like where there's a hand in one spot versus a hand not in the way. I can choose from one or the other and keep the one that I think is best. The other thing that I think is really worth pointing out is that even as a professional photographer, I go into these scenes and I take a lot of shots that just don't work. I try out things and they don't necessarily come good. Here we're looking at where I'm shooting back into the light, into the window, because that's something that I like to do a lot. And actually maybe the contrast was actually too much here and it wasn't working for me, and I just didn't have the right scene. In certain places it works really well, like here where we've got the steamers and they're going on the oven. I think that light coming through the doorway is really nice. What I like even more though is when I'm shooting a little bit more across the light. This beautiful scene here where we've got the 2 monks and we've got some of the momos there. It's not a glamorous kitchen, but it's got a beauty of its own, and that light coming from the side, I think really, that works for me. That's light that I really like. Light is what really draws me into this whole scene. And I just have to say a quick mention to my guide, Tsering. Tsering is fantastic. She's the reason that we're able to do these kinds of events with the monks. She's done all the work to organise this. Thank you very much, Tsering, for putting all this together. Tsering's been working with us for many, many years now. Her dad's actually one of the guys that does the Everest Base Camp treks. And Tsering does do those from time to time, but I think she prefers the photography tours. They're a little bit more gentle and we don't trek as much. So that's a good thing. So here's where we first got in there. And I like this light that's coming in the window, but I'm trying to find an angle where I can work the scene. But also I'm trying to find an angle where I'm not in everyone else's shot. I like getting the occasional image that's just a close-up of the food. I want these little bits of texture, these tight bits that really reveal some of the detail that's in the scene. I like to have stuff that's either very wide or very tight. When you're putting a collection together, You've got stuff that'll sit together nicely and will work together in a lot of different layouts or in lots of different curated sets. I like a few top downs, but mostly what I'm doing, I'm looking for where that light is coming through the room. And here, that light coming from the right of screen is just really, really beautiful for me. In general, I'm shooting things at a nice, reasonable shutter speed so that everything's nice and sharp. But then I think to myself, actually, let's slow it down. So here we go to a 40th of a second instead of 2/50th. Much, much slower. And I like that effect. And that's a very safe speed. I think that if you're going to do this technique and you use a continuous burst, you've got a lot to choose from. You'll get some stuff where your main scene is sharp and something else is blurry and moving in the shot. That works really well. A 40th is pretty good, but I decided I'd like to go a little bit harder than that still. And here I take it down to an 1/8. So at an 1/8, we're really getting some soft movement. The next thing I'm doing is I'm trying to focus on some of the characters that are in the scene, some of the people, and I'm treating this like portraits, but they're in their environment, they're part of their scene, and they're not paying attention to me, they're not paying attention to my camera, they're just going about the business and making momos. That's a great opportunity to shoot portraits. And that's working really well here. And the other thing that I really love about this is just, again, that light coming through the scene. It's giving it depth, it's giving it some interest, and it's giving it the right kind of contrast. As you'll see, I take a lot of shots of essentially the same scene, but I'm looking for slight variations and where one might be better than the other. In general, I'm kind of happy with this set. There's a few moments here that I think are really nice and they're just being themselves. And that's what I really want. My idea of portrait is just people being themselves. Or in this case, it's a dog being itself. I love the way the dogs are part of this temple in such an intimate way. They never get kicked out of spaces and such. They're allowed in there, they feel safe there. And that tells you something about the nature of the relationship between the monks and these dogs. One of the things that I really strive for when I'm doing these kind of shoots is that I don't just want these grand, great big hero scenes, but I want some gentle moments too. And this young lad just sitting in the sun, just trying to soak up the rays there. And we get that beautiful restricted color palette with the yellow of the walls, the red of the walls, reflecting with the saffron and the browns and the red of the monk's robes as well. And I love that color palette. It's just a young monk sitting there on a wall. But that's a really beautiful portrait to me, and you can see where that f2 lens is doing all the work. Most of my shots on this day was 35mm. I probably could have taken a few more with the 20, but essentially once I got out the 35, I was really happy and I just tended to go with that. So my 35mm was doing most of the work that you see here, and I was very, very happy with the results of that. This particular moment at the other end of the room, I really loved the way the light was playing there, but I didn't love so much all of our camera bags because we'd stashed them down at that end of the room to keep them away from where the momos were being made. So we decided to do something about that. We got the bags out the way and managed to take a few more shots of the monks while they were just in that beautiful light. And again, I'm not too fussed about whether the light blows out in the background, and I think that people often get too worked up over the background light. They're concerned about the blowouts here. I'm not concerned about those blowouts at all. They are fine. It's okay to leave that there. What I'm concerned about is, have I exposed properly for my subject? Because my subject is what it's all about, and he looks great. He looks really nice there. Just the colours in that room, that green aqua tone going with the reds. I just think it's a beautiful scene. It's a beautiful colour palette. There's so much that we can do with that, and all we need is a willing subject who enjoys having his photo taken. We certainly had plenty of that. And then I came back to just get a couple of top downs because they're always handy to have a couple of them. You don't want to shoot everything top down. It's very easy to overdo this technique, but it is good to have a couple in there. As we get onwards, I kind of want a portrait of just a Momo, and that's what I'm going for here. Again, that shallow depth of field, f2 is doing the work. Always good to include some hands in there, some hand actions. You've seen that plenty today. And in this case, we've got the action of the other photographers doing their thing. And then we came back into the kitchen and I took a few more shots there. They were making up this Momo sauce, absolutely delicious stuff. This was one of the best tasting Momo lunches I've had in a while. They were really delicious Momos. The sauce was great. They had a lovely bone broth to go with it as well. And this kid here, he was a wonderful subject, just posing in the doorway there. And again, sometimes it would be easy for that harsh light to lose him. And I want to see his face. I want to see some detail in there. It doesn't have to be the brightest part of the frame, but I still want to see some of the detail in there. And that's where your raw file's got so much headroom that you can pull back some of those shadows and reveal the detail that's hidden in the shot. Now we're moving on to the stage of things where lunch is on the way. They know it's coming very, very soon. It just hasn't hit yet. And here again, that F2, I hadn't seen the other photographer in the background there. That's got to change that shot just a little bit, but the boys are looking straight at me and straight at my camera. We had this one kid here who was trying to be shy and he was like, "Oh no, you're not going to get my photo." And he was putting on his hood and having a laugh. And I will bring back this photo of him, and I think he'll be really, really happy to have this photo, and I know his family will be very happy to have this photo. So at first they can be shy, but sometimes they're just being playful. And this kid here too, he was also a little bit shy at first, and everyone else in the room was giving him a hard time. Eventually he gave up. And it's fun for them. They're now the hero of this moment. They feel kind of special that we're here and we're taking photos of them. So now we've had a good hour or so to practice with the light and see how this room shoots, so that when the Momos do actually arrive, we have some idea as to what we're going to do. And again, there's not a lot that I need to do with this treatment style from one photograph to the other, but the treatment style is very flexible, this particular one with that raised curve. And here, look at that beautiful smile. We've got enough detail in the shadows. It's just lovely. I did try to take some photos outside as well with the reflections coming in through the window. Not sure that worked very well, so I didn't spend much more time on that. I moved on and went back to just waiting for those moments when the boys simply forget about me being there, they forget about my camera being there, and they're just being themselves. And when they're being themselves, those are the beautiful photographs. Those are the ones that I think I'm going to enjoy the most. And it just takes time. And so we're very lucky with these sorts of events where we can come in here, spend some time with them, gain a little bit of confidence with them, show them some pictures that we have on the back of the camera so they can see what we're doing and they can feel good about what we're doing. And then the Momos get here. The Momos turn up and everything's on. Everyone's getting shots. Usually what happens is the small boys go in first and they get to have their lunch before the bigger ones come in and have theirs. The bigger ones were a little bit pushier on this particular occasion. I think they were just very excited. And here they're going hard on the sauce. More Momos. The Momos keep coming in. And then because I've already had a chance to shoot in this room and to see how the light works in that space, when the moment happens and we have a chance to take some photos of the boys doing their things, there's no question for me as to where I need to be to get the right light and to get the shot that I want. Really for me, the dogs were actually one of the highlights of this particular lunch. The boys having their fun and enjoying the lunch is great. The Momo making is really beautiful too, but the dogs hiding in the scene and interacting and sneaking under the table and hoping that they'll get a snack, that's part of the story for me. Let's go back to our shortlist now. All the ones that have made the rating as opposed to the ones that haven't. Out of that 1,077 photographs, there's around about 200 that I've actually kept here. And I think there's some really good moments in there. I think it's easy sometimes to focus on the photos you didn't get and not to simply revel in the ones that you did get. Like this little moment here where this monk is just giving us this very generous kind of smile. He's posing for the shot on purpose. hope you've enjoyed that processing style. I know it's a little bit low key, it's a little bit relaxed, it's a bit gentle, as opposed to what comes out of the camera can look really, really harsh. But I really like the way this treatment style makes things gentle and soft. It's really good on the skin tones. It makes the skin tones look really good. I think sometimes people complain about the skin tones on their cameras and that they feel the color science on one brand of camera is going to be better than the other. But honestly, I think most of it comes down to your treatment. If you're not doing anything to your photos at all, I'd encourage you to really push the boat out a little bit and see what you can get out of your treatment. Don't just give it a small nudge, give it a big nudge and see if you can get an effect that you really like. I really hope you enjoyed getting to meet the monks today and getting a look at some of the delicious momos that we got to eat on this particular shoot. If you like this video today, please hit the like button because that lets the algorithm know that maybe someone else might like to watch it too. And if you'd like to see some more of these, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you very much for joining me and hope you have a great day.